Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm too short to stand behind the podium. I've been working on MHacks for about 2.5 years, so I've done a lot of really glamorous things, like load 200 cases of water into a U-Haul and drive people to the ER. But what I want to talk about today is something that I didn't do for a really long time. And obviously, because I go to Michigan, I bleed maize and blue, I have to quote Bush Unblucker and say that the most important part of your hackathon, hands down, is the team, the team, the team. And I'm not talking about the teams that come to your hackathon to build things. I'm talking about the people that you work with every day to make that happen. And there's kind of 3 big questions that I want you to be asking yourselves about your team and how you go about building it. So hopefully, does this? No, I have to click it. Next. Okay, cool. So the first thing is, who are you looking for? And this really comes down to what kinds of people do you want on your team, what kinds of people do you need on your team, and what kinds of skills and experiences should they have. And I'm actually going to throw it back to Hackcon 2 with one of my all-time favorite hackathon quotes, and it's from Dan Schlosser, who just graduated from Columbia and who's part of ADI, and he said, "Inclusivity, it's not just feeling welcome, it's wanting to come in the first place." And I think a really big part of this begins with your team. Your team is integral to your efforts to making your hackathon somewhere that everywhere wants to be. Everyone wants to be. And I think that one of the biggest problems that we fell into with MHacks is we were just recruiting hackers. We were like, oh, obviously we just want other hackers who know what hackathons are. And then we're like, but wait, we want people who don't know what hackathons to come to our hackathon. Well, the problem is if you only have people who know what hackathons are on your team, they have a really hard time attracting people who think that it's still Edward Snowden, in a basement, trying to break into the US government. And we definitely now have people on our team who, when they came in, were like, I honestly thought you were doing something illegal and it was somehow school sanctioned. That's kind of crazy. So you definitely need to, in order to make it somewhere that people want to be, especially for beginners and newcomers, for them to feel comfortable taking risks, you have to have people on your team who are identify with those people. Okay, so the kind of we've talked about it a lot, and I think that it's something that we keep returning back to. I know Brandon from GitHub talked about it, and then Chloe talked about it. I think a lot of people have talked about how the best hacks are interdisciplinary, the best teams are interdisciplinary. My favorite hack was built at MHacks by graduate students in mathematical biology who made an app about cartoons. And some of the craziest people and the best people I know in the hackathon community are nursing students leading volunteers and stat students doing communications. And I think it goes to show that you need people on your team who have a wide range of skills. I think sponsorship is the best example of it's hard, and it's hard to sell, and you don't always want to do that, and that might be a reason to go to your business school. Even if you think that they just think that hackers are code monkeys, there's a lot of value there. And so the biggest thing that, when I talk about diversity on a team, it's not just gender and race and socioeconomic background. It's a diversity of thought and a diversity of experience that makes your team dynamic and makes it so that people are bringing interesting perspectives. So the second question that I think comes up is all right, now I want all these great people, where do I find them? Because I only know hackers. And I think that sometimes we think that recruiters have it easy because all they do is sit on the phone and talk to people, and you write code all day. So that can't possibly be that hard. But it's actually really hard to recruit people and convince them to join this thing that you built. It's really easy to recruit your friends. You trust them, you like them, you're I would definitely hang out 10 hours a week with them. But it's important to look outside your network in order to find those people that have those different skill sets. And the biggest thing is, it's been talked about before, but making personal connections. Facebook messaging that person that you kind of know from that one sociology class that you took and being I see that you do really interesting things in marketing. I want you to come join my team. Another thing is talking about your hackathon so often that someone eventually joins or just tells you to shut up. Before MHacks 4, I was in South Africa for 3 weeks, and I literally shared a bed with my friend Marielle. And basically, I think she got so sick of me like taking 5 a.m. meetings to talk about MHacks, she's like, fine, I'll do buses. So she got pulled into it, so that's one way. You just like harass people until they finally like believe in what you're saying. And I think that something that kind of goes along with this when you're thinking about recruiting is keeping a low barrier to entry. Specific experience is great, like, you know, if someone magically apparently has, you know, done catering for 1,000 people before, that can be really valuable. But the fact is like most of us had no idea what we were doing. So when you think about recruiting, like don't ask for resumes, don't ask for LinkedIn. At MHacks, we'd rather hear you talk about your experiences than like read on a piece of paper what you like may have achieved. The second big part of recruiting is having a conversation. So however you determine who's on your team, whether it's through like a formal interview process or just like informally you talk about it a lot and you're like, hey, come to a meeting. Having a conversation can help like people set expectations. So you can like have a conversation where you outline what goes on behind the scenes. This is great even for hackers. They honestly have no idea what happens. They think like magically the food appears and like that's super great and magically there's money and it just rains down from the sky. That's not true. I think that's the second part is like listen to what they're interested in and brainstorm like what they might be working on. Where's the intersection of like their interests and like the needs that you have? So like my last comment, second to last comment apparently, is the most important question that we ask ourselves about potential teammates at MHacks is like, do they ask good, challenging questions? And by that I mean, are they thinking about problems in an interesting way? So no one has like all of the answers, but the questions you ask yourself and others determine how successful you'll be. So you don't have to be passionate about hackathons to join MHacks. You don't have to have any experience organizing events to join MHacks, but you do have to be curious and ask questions that kind of like make people think differently. Like, why do we give travel reimbursements to experienced hackers, and why do we send buses to the same schools? So the actual last comment on recruiting is resist the urge to make your team super big in the event that like you might need someone for that thing that you don't know about yet. Spending time managing people, like they're looking to you for advice, and if like you don't have a direction to point them, that can be really stressful. So just think about like how many people do I actually need, irrespective of the people that I have like in my candidate pool. And the last, I think, most important question is, what does it mean? Like, what does it look like to build your team? And this is kind of like our oops story. So during MHacks 4, we were like, we want to do this really crazy thing. We want it to be really great, and we were just like, we just need bodies. We just need people to like make phone calls and write code and like do all these things for us. And like occasionally we would like, yeah, like let's like throw a party and like have a drink or maybe a couple. So when people like left or didn't come back, we were just like, oh well, they just weren't cut out for it. Like they, you know, we moved too fast. Like we're too high pressure. Like they just don't belong where we are. And the consequence of that was like we lost some really like talented people who I think like I wish still work on MHacks today. And so that's when we started realizing, it's been a slow process, that we're like as responsible for growing our team as individuals as we are for making connections with sponsors and mentoring hackers and making sure that there's food. And I can tell you that investing in your team is not the same as like team building, where like you have a party or you go play laser tag or you do escape room or you like even a study session. Those are really fun and important for like creating a team dynamic, but the people on your team like need to be more than just friends. So I would say like if you take anything away, like this is the big thing, which is make sure that everyone on your team feels respected and valued for their contribution. So there's kind of like 3 things that I like to ask like our team members throughout like various like stops in the process. And it's ask what resources they need, ask what skills they want to acquire, and actually like put time into training them, and ask what goals they have, like either within your organization, within hackathons, or outside of it. Connect them to like people and resources to achieve those goals, and I think most importantly, like hold them accountable. Like I think that it's really easy to set goals, but if we don't, like it's hard for ourselves to hold us. It's hard for ourselves to hold us accountable, and we have that outside person being like, hey, like 3 weeks ago, you said like you really wanted to make a commit to the website. Have you done that yet? That's really important, and it kind of just all boils down to be the person that enables everyone else on your team to do their absolute best. And you honestly don't have to be the organizer or the director or like the person in charge. Anyone on your team should be thinking like, how can I help everyone else? How can I like leverage all of the resources and skills that I have and make sure that someone else like can take advantage of them? So there's kind of two reasons why I do this. So like selfishly, growing your team is probably like the best thing you could do for a hackathon. I'm a rising senior and I'm realizing like I'm gonna graduate and move on, and I have to leave my baby in the hands of these people that are hopefully I've trained them well. Like hopefully they don't like mess it all up and we have like no money in 2 years. I don't know, maybe I did a good job. But I think the second thing that has been talked about too is that like I've had the privilege of putting people in challenging situations and watching them rise to the occasion. And I think that like the mentors in my life like have demanded that I be someone that like I wasn't ready to be and like do things that I like didn't think I was really qualified to do. And I think that like my mentors have demanded that like I grow and that I learn. And those are the types of things that you should be doing within your hackathon team. So I kind of hope that like by the time I graduate, I'll have been able to pass on like some of like the wisdom and confidence that like someone else nurtured in me to everyone else. So just to recap, the three big questions that I like to think about throughout the whole process, and we like get new teams twice a year because we have 2 events. It's kind of a lot of work. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it's who are you looking for? What kinds of like skills and talents do you need on your team? How do you find them? Be deliberate about like seeking out specific people, and then most importantly, like what does it look like on your hackathon in your community to grow your team? So thank you.